Alex, a member of Temple High's Kulanu Committee, and on behalf of the committee, welcome to our second annual program. Kulanu, meaning all of us, is a project of the Anti-Defamation League. For those of you unfamiliar with the Anti-Defamation League's mission, it is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. The objectives of Kulanu include raising awareness and helping to combat anti-Semitism and other forms of hate by focusing on advocacy, engagement, and education among our Temple High family and the community at large. Who could have guessed a year ago when we presented our first program about the rise of anti-Semitism in our country that things would be even worse today? That Hamas and its supporters would launch a heinous attack on men, women, and children, citizens of Israel, the United States, Thailand, Germany, and other countries attending a peaceful music festival. This pogrom was the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Every day there are new reports about the fate of victims of the attacks, IDF soldiers defending Israel, and the Palestinians being used as shields by Hamas. Nationally and locally, we are learning about protests that have turned into riots, supposedly in support of peace in Palestinian territory. Sadly, many of these so-called peace protesters, which include students, professors, and trespassers on university property, are uneducated about the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict or any of the Middle East. Many are verbally and physically attacking Jewish students and their allies that express support for Israel. Even students who are just trying to get to class but are blocked by the encampment set up by protesters are being harassed. Today, we are fortunate to host speakers from the Phoenix Police Department, the Anti-Defamation League, Temple High, along with ASU Hillel's Executive Assistant Director, 2 current ASU students, and 1 student from the University of Arizona. We have a lot of material to cover this afternoon and are trying to be mindful of your time. We distributed index cards and pencils as you entered the social hall on which you can write questions that we will aggregate. Oh, we are going to distribute pencils and index cards on which you can write your questions, which we will aggregate and then ask at the end of the program. Volunteers will circulate during the program to collect cards, and additionally, our guests will be available to talk with you and answer any additional questions afterwards at the resource tables in the back of the room. Before we begin, I must acknowledge our Kulanu committee members who brought this program to fruition. Ellen Charrington, Amy and Alan Isaacson, Rob Marsh, Esther and Don Schoen, and Karen and Alan Stein. Please stand to be acknowledged. One last thing, please silence your cell phones. You don't want to be that person who's spoken. And now I am pleased to introduce our senior rabbi, Rabbi Emily Siegel.
I want to add my gratitude to our Kulanu committee for their incredible work. They have been meeting all year for months as the situation has developed, of course, before October 7th and since October 7th. And I'm just so grateful that we have a group of folks in the congregation who are so dedicated to this important work of combating anti-Semitism and raising awareness and helping us educate ourselves in order to educate others about how to combat anti-Semitism and the importance of being knowledgeable about the roots of anti-Semitism and what we can do in response. The situation on our college campuses, of course, we've all been following the news and reading the stories, and in my position, and along with Rabbi Capel and Cantor Woolman and so many others, we've been checking in with our college students and their families with help from the Shalom Center, and we've had a firsthand accounting from our college students, from many of them, about some of their experiences on campus. And I'm so glad that we'll have a chance to hear directly from college students as well. But just to highlight one thing that I know struck me is that we had a number of college students, and this is just those we spoke to, who reported that they had wanted to attend Passover Seders at Hillel or on campus, but didn't feel safe to do so, which broke my heart, and drove home for me that this isn't news stories, this isn't flashy headlines, this isn't just legislators talking or making statements. This is about real lived life and Jewish life for our young people and on campus, and not just our young people, but faculty, people who work on campus, and real safety. And so again, I'm really grateful that we have the opportunity to dig in together, to learn and to hear and to work together to combat anti-Semitism. Thank you again to the Kulanu Committee, to all of the people we're going to hear from today, and to each of you for taking the time to be here.
So our first guest is Detective McDermott from the Phoenix Police Department. Temple High has a very good relationship with the police department, and she's going to share with us how the police department is involved with the community and how we should interact with the police department. Detective McDermott.
Thank you very much. I'm Detective Charlie McDermott. I've been with the police department for about 18 years, and I'm very short. And I am the dedicated bias crimes detective. That means I do hate crimes only. I'm one of about 5 in the whole nation. I have a master's degree in community resilience, so this is obviously something that I'm not taking lightly. It's my life's work. So I want to be here as more of a resource. Anything that you have, I can answer questions about, and they've already brought up that how things are going in society right now. And when we have people on college campuses that are hearing things echoed from media, their parents and families and all over the place, and without a broad array of life skills to deal with these things, and then it's kind of the rest of the world is lacking in life skills as well. So we want to try to, we know the media is against everybody. They want to inflate and make everything inflammatory. You have to take it with a grain of salt, but we know what is really happening, of course. If you get that ick feeling, that's when you report things. We know that everything is very underreported, absolutely, and sometimes we get a little like what can actually be done, but nothing is going to be done if we don't report it. So I will provide everybody with my email, my phone numbers, that if I'm in the response aspect, if something's happening, I don't come out unless it's something that's kind of big. But if you have a question about something, absolutely, you can reach out, feel free to call me or email me anytime, and I will answer as soon as I get to that phone call. Like I said, any questions that can answer. I'm the one that's boots on the ground. I'm doing the work for people. So I have all the answers that if I can answer it, I absolutely will. So I don't know if we're going to do that later,
we can do that later since you
Okay.
can stay.
Thank you. And then I hope that I've given at least some part of a little foundation, and that I'm here and we'll talk later. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm pleased to introduce Taylor Silverman. She's the Assistant Executive Director of ASU Hillel. She'll be speaking for a few minutes, and then we'll also hear from students. Dylan Brooks, who is a junior? Graduate of the University of Arizona. Congratulations. Courtney Berman and Ariel Pfeffer are students at ASU. Both of you are juniors? I'm a senior. Junior. Junior. Okay, we did talk. So anyway, so Taylor, take it away. Oh, there's a mic here.
Yeah.
Probably.
the team. I'm Taylor Silverman. It's so nice to meet
Oh,
you.
can introduce that. Sorry.
And Ed Ober sitting next to me, our board chair, president. Really, this is always done in partnership, and we've needed it so much this year. So when asked to talk a little bit about life on campus, we kind of saw this as a state of the union, if you will. What is it like to report just what's happening down the street? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about our programming and response on the ground, and Ed's going to speak about the community. And we know so many of you have questions about how can you help, what can you be doing, what's it like safety-wise, right? The questions that particularly our parents and grandparents' minds. So a little bit about Hillel, and then we can absolutely talk about the broader landscape at ASU too, because we're 3,500 Jewish students strong. So there are 3 Jewish organizations plus a Jewish sorority, a Jewish fraternity, Jewish studies. So I'm just speaking on behalf of ASU Hillel right now, but we can talk more about the climate and general landscape. So we were established in 1946, and traditionally we've served students holistically as they've been on this journey, right? Not just Jewish, but this transformative journey for 4 years as they're figuring out what are they going to do and who are they going to be, where do they want to belong. And so we really focus so much of our time on instilling that Jewish identity through whatever means that looks like, whether that's a journalist student, an engineering student, and we love it. Prior to October 7th, we'd have 1 to 2 anti-Semitic incidents. We'd have the occasional boycott, divestment, and sanction campaign, and students woke up during fall break, and October 7th, the world looked very different. And many students were wondering, well, how am I going to get to class? How am I going to focus on class? Will it be safe for me to go to class? And the student groups looked a little different. And we obviously have been hearing everything across the country, and I don't want to go too far without saying we've had so many partners in support of Jewish students, including ASU administration, ASU PD, JCRC, ADL. We can talk, Ed's going to talk more, but this has always been in partnership to make sure that students are safe. And so quickly after October 7th, students returned from fall break, and we'd have the weekly protests. And I'm not going to speak from Jewish experience, the Jewish student experience, because we have them right here, but from the staff perspective of the things that they don't tell you that may enter into a Hillel professional's role: crisis response, safety and mitigation, media and PR, right? All of the areas that you dabble in, but really we're in the business of building Jewish life. And so to talk a little bit about what it looks like to address that anti-Semitism, we've really created a 3-pronged approach. So that means, number 1, we want students to feel Jewish pride. We want them to feel this immense sense of joy to be in community and in relationship with themselves and others and their Jewish identities. So that might look like a big Sparky's Hanukkah party on Mill Avenue. That might look like a Passover Seder safely at the center of campus, as opposed to in a building where we can't fit everyone safely. It's another story. And so we really want to focus first and foremost on how do we make sure students feel connected and that they're not in this alone. And then the other piece is Jewish education. So there's been a lot around Israel, whereas sometimes we talk about, well, I don't know where God fits into my story. I don't know where religious law fits into my story. And really the education piece has transformed into, I'm hearing all these chants for call to Intifada. I'm hearing chants around from the river to the sea. I don't know what that means myself. So how do I start to even approach someone? And so our classes quickly turned into, well, we need to be educating students. That meant bringing in experts. That meant bringing in researchers. That meant Jonathan Greenblatt being in town and speaking with a group of student leaders. So that was a key part of our education. And number 3 is fostering university and community partnerships. And so I'm really going to have Ed take it away on that piece. And so we'll hear more from students. Thankfully, students graduated. They were able to have a graduation, which for many of you, if you're tracking this year, they started in 2020. So they actually didn't get a high school graduation. So that was a very big deal for the campuses that aren't having those. Our students were able to walk and they were able to celebrate. And my last piece is, I think we're trying to teach students to live in the gray. We're very much around how are we building you, not just as a Jewish citizen, but a global citizen. And so you're going to have to tackle many different gray areas and deal with a lot of complexity in your life and your world. This is one of them. And it's hard. It's hard for us as individuals. It's hard for an 18-year-old. So that's just a glimpse into our work very briefly. I want Ed to have some time to speak.
Thank you, Taylor. So I'm the ASU LL board chair, and like Taylor and Debbie, the staff at ASU, as board members, we had no idea this year was going to be like this. It's been a very different time for Jews around the world and all of us here. Here's the one biggest message I want to get from the board of directors of Hillel to everybody here today. The most important thing, the thing that keeps us awake at night, is keeping our students and staff safe. And that's been it's a very intentional journey that we're on, and a very important one. Example. For those of you that have been down to ASU Hillel, you know that we've outgrown that building long ago. We're having a capital campaign now. We're starting it to build a new building. So what we do is we cram inside upstairs for Shabbat, and then we have Shabbat dinner out on the parking lot because we can't fit tables. About 10 days before October 7th, we had a beautiful Shabbat on Family Weekend with over 200 people under a tent, beautiful lights out on the parking lot with security. October 7th happened, and the Tuesday of that week, Debbie and I are talking, we've got 3-4, some people for security for Shabbat dinner on Friday night. And we talked to each other and said, there's no way we're having Shabbat dinner on a parking lot. So we worked very quickly with ASU. We found a building in the center of campus, and that's where we had Shabbat. And that's where we've mostly had Shabbat during this past year because we don't have the room. And we did have the senior Shabbat recently out in the parking lot. It was beautiful, but it was different. There were so many people in uniforms protecting us. So safety is really a very important thing for us. Senior Shabbat was fabulous. It was beautiful. But I felt for the seniors because, and Dylan, you can understand this, they started as freshmen during the pandemic and they ended as seniors after the post-October 7 world. So it's a tough journey for college students. The other thing I want to emphasize is this. And as a board, part of what we want to do is support our professionals. Taylor, our associate director, and Debbie, our executive director, and their staff. Because it is brutal on the professionals on campus right now. It is so hard. Example, Senior Shabbat I just mentioned, that was the day of the encampment. The Palestinian protesters. Debbie was there, our executive director, all day long, dealing with the ASU administration, who have been wonderful and very, very, very helpful. I can't tell you how many times Debbie has talked to Michael Crow this semester. A lot. They've been wonderful, very supportive of ASU in keeping us safe. So Debbie's down on campus making sure that students there are safe. Poor Taylor is dealing with calls from the press and parents all day long. I get there about a half an hour before services are set to start, and I look at both of them and I know that they've been exhausted. I know that Debbie just sat in her car for 20 minutes, before Shabbat services just to gather herself. And then we had a joyous Shabbat dinner, and we celebrated our seniors. And that's important. There was a Wednesday night in November where Debbie and Taylor and the staff helped our students at a student government meeting where there was a BDS resolution that ended up being tabled because there were rocks thrown by a protester outside against the window, and and they had to table that meeting. That was a Wednesday night. Our students were respectful. They dressed up for the meeting. They were wonderful. I can't say the same for the people that were making the BDS motion. And it was a difficult evening, very difficult evening. The next night, 200 students were on Mill Avenue for a Sparky's Hanukkah party. That's important. You need to have the joy and the light while the darkness. So that's really important. Last thing I want to say, and I want to say it again, our main goal is to keep students safe. If anybody out there wants to help, and by that I mean we've got a Tempe police car in our parking lot all day long every day. We've got guards when we have students gathering at Hill for events. The administration has been wonderful. The Tempe police has been wonderful. So if anybody wants to talk afterwards about anything that the community can do, we sure need help. But I'll turn it back over to Taylor, and she's going to moderate, I think. She's here soon. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to spend a few minutes really hearing from the students and their experiences. Sandy, please correct me if you have questions that you wanted me to on.
Go ahead.
But I'm going to start. Okay. You have a mic there. We've been talking broadly, but it's really important to hear about your individual experiences. So how about you introduce yourselves, your name, what you study or studied, your grad year or when you just graduated, and what was life like pre-October 7th for us in Jewish life? Let's start there. What was it like? And then we'll get to post.
Perfect. So hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to see so many people. My name is Dylan Brooks, and I just graduated from the University of Arizona, where I studied accounting and Judaic studies.
Woo, accounting.
Yeah. I gave my Jewish mother proud. So next year I am planning to head off to Israel and study at yeshiva for at least a year. We'll see what happens, God willing. And pre-October 7th, at least for me, what I can talk about is I've always been involved with the Jewish community at U of A. We have all three organizations of Chabad, Olami, and Hillel. I was the president of the Homeland team, which is our Israel culture group on campus. So I was heavily involved, but I wasn't wearing a kippah or keeping Shabbat, and that started about last summer. So let's see how it changed very quickly in October. But that's, I guess, my background a little bit. I'll pass it over to Courtney.
Thank you. I'm Courtney. I'm a junior at ASU. I'm studying social work, and in about a couple weeks, Ariel and I are both heading off to Israel to attend a bar mitzvah and then volunteer for 2 weeks, and then I'll be attending a seminary program for 5 months.
5 months.
5 weeks. I wish it was 5 months. It's wishful thinking, I guess. Sorry, Mom. Not yet. So, pre-October 7th, I was very involved in Jewish life on campus. I would say all my friends are Jewish. I don't live on campus, but at the time I did live in a house half a mile away. I teach Sunday school here at Temple Chai, and I grew up here. I've been very involved. Judaism has always been a very huge part of my life, and I think I took it for granted a little bit. I never really realized just how special it was. It was just kind of a normal part of my life. I think it definitely contributed a lot to who I am today. But pre-October 7th, I wasn't keeping Shabbat. I wasn't really learning much about anything Judaism-wise, other than what I was teaching my pre-Kers. But yeah, that changed very quickly.
Hello, I am Ariel Pfeffer. I am a senior this year, which is crazy. I'm studying political science with a double major in psychology. And I'm going to Israel with Courtney in just a few weeks. We are so excited, not for 5 months. all the Jewish organizations. We have a Junity chat now. So much terribleness came out of October 7th, but also a lot of good in terms of, like, looking on the bright side, like, so many Jews became more involved and started showing their pride and started being advocates for one another and then also for Israel. Yeah.
Okay, this one's about your individual experience or friends. How would they describe the campus climate for you now, post October 7th? What has been on people's minds, and what are they saying about campus climate and their own experiences?
Is this mostly the Jewish community?
Yeah, like you and your friends, I would say.
Okay, perfect. So I actually agree with what Ariel just mentioned, that the Jewish community at U of A has become, what did you use, Junity? Like, unified. We've gotten very close. All three organizations, Chabad, Olami, and Hillel. And I'm impressed with, I guess, before October 7th, there's always this division between religious, secular, Jews tend to divide themselves sometimes, especially in times of peace, but October 7th really brought everyone together. Now there's not really as much separation there. I think there might be a separation between some non-Jewish friends now, which I guess we'll probably get into later, but the Jewish community has gotten stronger.
I would definitely agree. I think that we've seen a lot of resilience within our community. A lot of people who maybe weren't so involved before have stepped up to the plate immensely. As for the atmosphere outside of Jewish life, college campuses right now are really sad. It's depressing. I hate going to class. I hate sitting in class. I hate it. I moved off of campus. I moved back home with my parents. And the only reason I go to Tempe is to go to Shabbat and to go see my Jewish friends at Olami or Chabad or Hillel. There are more people noticing us, and not in a good way. People look for us and notice who are the Jewish students and how can we get under their skin today. And it is hard because it's hard to represent the Jewish student body in a nice way when you're dealing with all this hate around you. I didn't feel safe for a while. I remember calling my dad when I was home alone in my house in Tempe, freaking out because our house has always had Jewish students living in it, and we had a mezuzah hanging on our door, and I was terrified knowing that there was a protest happening less than a mile down the street, and I was home alone, and that just kind of set into my brain that, like, this is serious and this is not something to joke about, and anti-Semitism is a real thing, whether or not people want to admit it. But I do think there's something to be said about our Jewish students and how we've continued to show our Jewish pride, and we've stepped it up a notch. And I remember, I'm pretty sure October 7th happened during Simchat Torah, right? Yeah. And the next day, I showed up with my friends actually to Chabad, and instead of hiding and instead of staying inside, we actually took our Torah and we marched all the way onto campus, and we danced and we sang and we jumped in the fountains. But we didn't hide, and we did the opposite. We said, we are here and we are proud, and a little bit of anti-Semitism can't stop that, and I think that's really amazing.
Yeah, so I was with Courtney when that happened, and our rabbi said, if we don't dance, they win. And that's pretty much sums up how campus has been since October 7th. It's been hard, it's been exhausting, but it's also about finding those moments where you get to be with your Jewish friends and you get to celebrate Israel and just being together. And but a little bit more about campus. Like once a week they have a protest, and we've gotten to the point where the Jewish students know where they're having the protests, how to get around it. If you do walk up to a protest, you know Taylor's going to be there taking pictures. Most recently, I was learning with one of the staff members from Chabad. We we gotta focus on life.
What does the community need to know about your experiences if they're about to send a child to campus, maybe have someone on another campus? You know, from your experience, what's been helpful? What has not been helpful? What do you wish you had? I would leave it vague to that, but passing on those words of wisdom as you've been through it.
I think the first thing that everyone needs to know is that there are resources. All these campuses, especially in Arizona, have a lot of Jewish students and a large Jewish community that is there to support you. I think that I guess this is where a division has come between me and some of my non-Jewish friends, is that the Jewish students are mourning right now. It's still very recent, the pain that we felt on October 7th, and sometimes I just need a rant to my Jewish friends, and there are communities to do that, but when I try and rant to friends who, whether or not they're anti-Semitic, whether or not they know the situation, I still feel a need to defend my belief and my feeling, because I think the Jewish students are in pain, but there are resources, there are people to support you. The Jews have dealt with this before, and we remain strong.
I think if you know a student that is incoming into college or high school, even elementary school, urge them to get involved, whether that's a youth group, Jewish summer camp, Sunday school, whatever they can. Education is extremely important, and if we don't educate ourselves now, we'll lose what makes us special, and that's our Judaism, and that's the tradition that we have continued for thousands of years. I think that's very important. Our community has been extremely supportive. In Tempe, the ASU police and the Tempe Police Department, they've been incredible. They are there whenever we need them, and our leaders are very, very, very supportive as well. And so just encourage those students to show up to Shabbat dinner and to show up to that freshman event that might seem boring, or show up to the Tikti event. Encourage them to get involved and encourage them to reach out to their Jewish friends. And I encourage all of you to find a Jewish person that maybe isn't so involved and maybe invite them to get involved too, because we are all hurting, like Dylan said, and maybe some of those people just don't know exactly where to turn to. And so I think that's our job, to include them and to make those Jewish people that don't feel so seen and so heard feel part of the family.
So I'm a tour guide on campus, and I always wear my Israel necklace, and I had like a Nova Fest bracelet on. And a girl came up to me and she pulled me aside. She was like, "I'm Israeli, like, how is life on campus?" And I was like, you know what? It's better than most, is the answer we get. And it's not great. It could be so much better, but it could be so much worse. We had an encampment and lasted a day. Thank God. Like that. Yeah, we had the encampment, but it also only lasted a day. So there's good in that. The Jews on campus would feel so lost without organizations like Chabad, Hillel, and Aloni. If you can support any one of those organizations, please do so. As a student, they are not like just an organization on campus. They are our family. Like when I say they are our family, they are the people that we call at 1 o'clock in the morning when we know there's a protest the next day. I've called Taylor really early in the morning when I knew the encampment was going to be set up. They are incredible, and through them, they don't breed just a bunch of students. They breed just a bunch of leaders. So through them, we've been able to go to the Capitol and introduce resolutions, pass legislation, work with a lot of different state representatives. So when you're thinking about sending a student to ASU or asking like, what resources are best, it's just giving them a place where they can be an advocate for themselves and also be an advocate for other Jewish students. And encourage them to get
are present on hundreds and hundreds of chapters, so our campuses and have chapters, so please come find us afterwards so we can connect you. We want to make sure you feel like you have support no matter where they are. So I'm passing it back to Sandy.
Well, there's more to our program, but I think we should stop and take a few seconds, a minute to applaud for Ed. Our next speaker is Zach Abrams, who is, from what I'm told, the program coordinator for our Temple High Roger King program. He's going to speak about the response to anti-Semitism in K-12 years. He is a behavioral specialist, and I'll leave it to you, Zach, to introduce yourself in greater detail. Thank you.
All right, just making sure the technology works. All right, thank you, Temple High community. My name is Zach Abrams. Just so you guys kind of know who I am, I received my master's in education in 2021. The last 3 years, I have worked as a school behavior specialist. I am an educator. Outside of my work in the Deer Valley Unified School District, I am a religious school teacher for Temple High. I've been involved with Temple High going into my 10th year coming up, where I've been in the classroom, I run a sports program. Most of the kids at Temple High know me as Coach Zach. If you have been at Temple High for more than 16 years, you might probably know me as Sheena's son. On occasion, I am known as Heather's husband. If I go through the preschool, I am known as Aurora's dad. And to some of the religious school students, they say, why aren't you Moray Dillon? You look like Moray Dillon. Moray Dillon is my twin brother. So, lots of different ways that I'm known here at Temple High. One of the most important things about myself is that I am a pro-Israel Jew. Unapologetically pro-Israel Jew that is very much ingrained in who I am. And so, the perspective that I bring is that, but it's also that of a school behavior specialist. Show of hands, how many of you are either the parent of a student in K-12 or know someone very close to you who is? Okay, so my goal today is to educate you guys a little bit about the issues surrounding anti-Semitism in schools, what schools can and should be doing, and I'm going to offer some advice to support you guys because, like I said, I am a school behavior specialist. I'm there, and I can give you guys what you need to know to help combat some of this. So just first off, just a few general statistics. The ADL, which was founded in 1913, tracks incidents of anti-Semitic harassment, vandalism, and assault. And in 2023, we saw a huge increase. Some of the numbers that I want to direct you to, 140% increase in anti-Semitic incidents across the United States, a 69% increase in vandalism, over 184% increase in harassment. And since October 7th, there have been 5,204 incidents at the time that I made this presentation, which is more than the incident total for the entirety of 2022. 52% of the incidents after October 7th included references to Israel, Zionism, or Palestine. So I want to leave those numbers with you for a quick minute. And just make sure that we know this is real, this is happening. And a really great study in 2022 from the Jewish Community, or the Jewish Community Relations Bureau in Kansas City actually showed us some more specific things relating to students, and these are ever true today. Over 41% of students state that they're the target of anti-Semitism at school. 89% have witnessed some form of anti-Semitism at school. That includes Jew jokes, that includes Holocaust comments, that includes swastikas spray painted just for fun. In fact, I remember when I was in high school, it was right before homecoming, and the people that we were playing at homecoming vandalized our school. Ha ha, it's a prank. There were a couple swastikas. It was a thing. Holocaust denial or distortion, saying it's an over-exaggeration. Conspiracy theories and anti-Zionism. And yes, anti-Zionism is closely tied to anti-Semitism. If not, it is anti-Semitism, and we'll get to that. It's all over the place, okay? You guys can see over here that even across the pond in the United Kingdom, it's happening there. It's happening in New York. It's happening in Arizona. It is happening at schools all across the way. Okay, so just making sure we know this is not just an Arizona problem. It's not just a U.S. problem. This is a global problem that we are experiencing in our schools. So there's some important connections that I want to draw you guys to with this. First off, anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are closely tied together. Don't tell me for 1 minute that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Do not tell me that for 1 minute. Because if it wasn't anti-Semitism, then we would not be seeing the rise in anti-Semitic attacks. The rise in anti-Semitic attacks since October 7th doesn't just reflect that there's a connection between the two, but there is a normalized anti-Semitic sentiment that appears to be accepted as the status quo. It's just, this is what it is. And that's not okay. Our kids deserve better. Our students deserve better. So what can we do? I'm going to tell you. So, first off, school workers and administrators have an obligation to follow up on any incidents relating to hate speech. It says so in just about any handbook that you will have for any school district. Districts, charter school organizations, private schools, wherever you have your kids, all of them have discipline procedures. I know this because this is literally what I've been doing for a living for 3 years. Everybody's got discipline procedures that relate specifically to hate speech. The other piece that I want parents to know is that you are a stakeholder. The school is not just the students in the building and the teachers in the building and the administrators in the building. If you're a parent, you're a stakeholder, and you have a right, not just like an opportunity, you have a right to participate in the educational process for your children. I also encourage you to always present a wide variety of sources and perspectives to give students the full picture. I don't believe that any teacher should be saying, you know, this is the right way to look at it or this is the wrong way to look at it. I think teachers and educators need to be giving an abundance of sources so that people can make their own decisions and their own opinions. But I also believe that schools have an obligation to provide a space for students who are Jewish so that they will feel safe and learn to thrive. I believe that schools have an obligation to do that. So here's my advice. Number one, I want you to know your rights. So go to your school district's website today, when this is over, and I want you to look for something called the SR&R, or the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. Some districts call it a code of conduct. I think it's typically known as the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. It is in my district. Please get involved. PTA, booster clubs, whatever it is that you do, because your involvement actually gives you a higher voice. That's just something that rings true. Your voice will come through with your involvement. The other piece is report concerns. Your student comes home from school and they say, somebody threw a quarter in my direction and said, hey, Jew, pick it up. Actual thing that happened to me in middle school. Don't just say, oh, buddy, that sucks. It's how it is. Call your school's administration. Call your school, ask for the behavior specialist. Tell them what's going on. And follow the chain of command. If your needs aren't met, you talk to somebody like me who's the behavior specialist, and you are not satisfied, call and ask for the assistant principal. You're not satisfied, call and ask for the principal. You're not satisfied, call the district office. Follow the chain of command, okay, because your concerns need to be met. We have an obligation to report hate speech. Also, make sure that your student has identified some trusted adults on campus. I think it's important that every kid have at least one trusted adult on campus, whether that's their science teacher or a behavior specialist or the janitor, whoever. Like, make sure that they've got somebody at school that they can rely on. And lastly, educational, just for everybody, make sure you always check news sources before you react to anything. Because sometimes people post things from the Babylon Bee on Facebook and they think that it's totally real, or the Onion or whatever, and it's like, everybody needs to calm down. The other piece that I also want to say, for all the things that are happening in schools right now, something that is true in my heart and is true in the heart of just about every school administrator or school worker I've ever worked with, educators don't go into education just because they love the subject or they love talking a lot. They do it so that they can provide relationships and support to students. So I assume positive intent when it comes to your schools, when it comes to the teachers, when it comes to the admin, but don't be afraid to hold them accountable, okay? Because they need to be, and they need to be making schools a safe place for your child and for your child's well-being. Thank you.
Well, as a former district school board member, I can agree wholeheartedly with Zach's advice for parents. Thank you, Zach. Before we continue, I just want to see if anybody has filled out any question cards, because we'll start picking them up now as we continue with the program. Thank you. So our next speaker is Sharon Gordon. She is on the Education Committee with the ADL, and she is involved with ADL's No Place for Hate program, which is a program, a national program that ADL offers to schools. So take it away, Sharon.
It's really wonderful to see all of you here today. I had no idea when I started preparing, will we have 20, will we have 50, will we have 40, will we have this many? Great. I have been a part of the ADL regional board here in Arizona for close to 8 years, and I have been as the education chairperson for going on 7. Oh my gosh. Anyway, it's been a while, and I've had a lot of experience with the schools here in Arizona. No Place for Hate is a 25-year-old program. It's celebrating its 25th year this year. And as we know, No Place for Hate is more relevant now than it's ever, well, it's always been relevant, but now it's very, very important. And it ranges from kindergarten through 12th grade. So it is a program that can change the culture of a school from negative behaviors to positive behaviors. It doesn't happen that fast, it doesn't happen that easily, but when No Place for Hate becomes part of the culture of a school, those kids feel safe, they feel listened to, they feel that they have a say in their school life. And I have a testimonial on the back table there from one of the teachers that has been doing No Place for Hate for 10 years. Unfortunately, you can't see what her name is because it came out, didn't copy well. But her name is Kelly McGuire, and she is a teacher at the Horizon Honors out in Ahwatukee. Anyway, if you don't take anything else, please take this, because she's amazing, and she has really given her heart and soul to the program. I will tell you that No Place for Hate is proactively addressing bias and bullying. There were many incidents of those, which is interesting. I mean, bullying has been going on for forever, right? It does tend to change when this program starts to take hold in a school. We ask students for buy-in. Does every single student have to buy into the program? No. Does the majority of students have to buy in? Yes. And that buy-in is a way of having the students be somewhat accountable. They sign a pledge. They can do it in lots of different ways, but that pledge is displayed in the school, and that really empowers them and empowers the school to continue the program. This program is done every year, so it's not just it's not like we started it a few years ago and that's where we left it. It has to start from the beginning every year. And for those of you that are in the schools, you know that schools change, administrators and teachers and whatnot. So that's another reason it has to start every year. We ask ask that a committee is formed to facilitate that No Place for Hate activities, and that those No Place for Hate activities are implemented throughout the year. No Place for Hate is meant to be a student-run program. That's the other piece I really like about this program in the schools. It allows the students to take hold, and they are supported, of course, by staff people, and we have program coordinators in every school. Okay, there are many ADL activities pertaining to each grade level. So if you were in a school with that was K through 8, you could have a theme. A theme would be kindness. Let's say kindness. That's a great theme, especially for the young kids. And that theme then can be taught at the upper levels of that school through more depth, through more examples, through literature that would address that level of that child. An example of a school-wide activity, and I just said this, is that a book can be taken from what we have called Books Matter. ADL has published a huge list over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, and they have delineated them through grade levels. So a teacher could easily find the book and assign the book, use the book, and that would be really a great activity for a particular time. What kinds of topics would we want to see? We would want to see kindness, allyship, acceptance, respect, tolerance of differences. Those are all really integral to the program. And it is something that kids love. They love books, and they love going towards those books to learn about these topics. Some schools have done school gardens. Now, why would you think a school garden would help you with bias and racism and hatred? I know, you could just think it. But it's right, because you have to do it together, and anything that you do together promotes. That's right. And it takes all the diversity and just kind of says, okay, this is fine. We'll plant carrots and we'll plant onions and we'll plant lettuce, and that's going to be that example of diversity, but we're going to do it together, and we're going to have something that we all enjoy. And it has been very successful in many schools that I have been to. We have something called Echoes and Reflections, which is a part of No Place for Hate. I mean, it's separate but part, but it's connected. And Echoes and Reflections is our Holocaust education. We also have something called, this is a very new program that's just been launched, and it's for middle school and high school. And it is an online learning program. It's called Challenging Antisemitism. And it's, like I say, it's middle to high school. So far, we have 368 educators from 39 states have used this program, reaching 17,000 students. Now, it is a program that is done by modules. You probably don't need to know. I'm not going to go too, don't worry, I'm not going to give you too much. I'm just going to tell you that it's 4 modules, and they're 30 minutes each. And it's done in the classroom, or the teacher can assign it as a homework assignment. It's really a great program, too, because it has that flexibility of a teacher using this online program and the teacher to facilitate this program one-to-one or one to a small group. And they've done, I think, a fabulous job with this. The content is exploring Jewish identity, examining anti-Semitism, challenging the myths and the scapegoating nature of anti-Semitism, and championing justice using the pyramid of hate and pyramid of outlashes, which you probably don't know a lot about. But the pyramid of hate is a major tenet of No Place for Hate in ADL.
Sharon, I'm gonna, because we're limited for time, so.
I have 2 more things to say.
Okay.
The situation in Arizona, and I think this is probably what you really want to hear, so let me just say this. We have between 24 and 29 schools, and that's a lower number of schools than we've had in the past. And we are not, this is not just for us, it's all across the nation have seen a decline in No Place for Hate involvement. Why is this important? Because we are all, we're have a lot of concerns and a lot of worry right now. But I do want to say one thing. In viewing the hostile environments and the hostile climates, ADL is certainly concerned about this drop. But we also see it as an opportunity. We see it to keep up the good fight and work hard with the schools who do want No Place for Hate. And we do want to support their efforts because these schools hopefully will serve as positive models in our communities.
Okay, I'll start with a few questions. Oh, wait, you know what? Can some of our volunteers grab some more index? Oh, sorry. Well, then first, we'll take a few minutes to thank you all for being here today. Thank you to our speakers. I think it's an understatement to say that we've learned a lot from you, especially the students, and we appreciate you taking the time to educate us and sharing your comments and testimonials. We often attend presentations and wonder, what can I do to affect change? Well, we have a few options for you. But first, I want to bring up Don Schoen, who's a Kulanu committee member who also served on the board of Arizona ADL. The Arizona ADL sponsored anti-swatting legislation that passed in the State House and Senate and was recently signed by Governor Hobbs. Don will tell us a little bit about why this legislation was needed and how it came to be.
Thank you, Sandy. I am Don Schoen. I am on the board of ADL, and I'm also on the board of Temple High. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to just really summarize very briefly the lovely data that Zach mentioned that comes from the annual audit on anti-Semitic incidents that's published by ADL every year. The 2023 summary was just released, and on the ADL table in the back, I have some links that will take you there if you want to study that report in detail, and I do recommend it. There also are links so that you can look at the annual audit that was just published for the first time on anti-Semitic incidences on universities and colleges. The data is stark. Threefold increase in 2023 from all previous years. And it goes from K through 12 schools to colleges to universities. It's across the board. Even worse, every month since October 7th, the incidence of anti-Semitic incidents in the United States has been greater than the total in 2022. This is serious. And don't bury your reaction to it. You have representatives, you have Congress people, reach out. Now, when somebody calls in a bomb hoax, which, by the way, the number of bomb hoaxes in Jewish institutions, especially synagogues, has gone up threefold in the last year. When they call in a bomb hoax, or somebody calls up and says, Sandy is murdering her husband.
My husband's parents are in the first row.
The police often send out a SWAT team. So those incidences came to be known as swatting. Believe it or not, that was not a felony in the state of Arizona until very recently. ADL wrote legislation. It was passed by the House and the Senate. The governor signed it about a month ago. It is now a Class 1 felony in the state of Arizona. But Arizona does not have hate crimes legislation. It is not a felony to commit a hate crime in Arizona. ADL will be working this year with the Bard College Center on the Study of Hate to try and collect the data and try and get a hate crime legislation proposed and passed in the state of Arizona. So if you want to do something productive, write your state representative, your state senator, and say, we need anti-hate crime legislation. So that's what's going on. I'm here, Seth Rackman on the board of ADL, my wife Esther on the board of ADL, her sister Gail, who was just recently on the board of ADL, and Sharon are here to answer any questions you have. Please don't be shy and just let us know.
As Don mentioned, resource tables in the back of the room. You'll find printed materials from the ADL and the Jewish Community Relations Council, which also engages with other community groups to strengthen ties to the Jewish community. Additionally, there are materials from an organization called Stand With Us, and Alan Isaacson will take 2 minutes to talk about it. I thought you wanted
I'll
to
take one.
Take one. Okay,
Everybody
you
hear me
better.
okay?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you, students who I know. Courtney, wave your hand. Courtney said something that just screamed out. Courtney asked us to please keep ourselves educated. We're the spokespeople for them. We're the spokespeople for what's happening in the Jewish world. That being said, there's lots of sources that everybody can go to. There's 2 in particular that are near and dear to me. One of those is a publication free online called Israel 21C. It is filled weekly, it's completely free, with great stories of things coming out of Israel. No matter what you hear, these are all positive things, from science to environment, even politics. So that's one thing you can do when you leave here. Israel 21C, get it on your phone, subscribe to it, it's free. They'll send you the information to your computer every week. Number 2, Stand With Us, which is an international publication organization. You could go ahead, it won't cost you a dime. You can sign up with Stand With Us. There's bulletins up here. These are booklets. One is things Israel has done in its lifetime. One is Jewish people. One is quickly, faster. Okay. Rather than have these booklets for you, there's over 40 of them. They're very educational. Go online and Stand With Us. They're called booklets. Download them, and here's what you can do with Israel 21C and that information. Find 5 or 6 other Jewish friends that may not have the answer to basic questions about Israel or what's going on, and send those to them. It's real easy to do. It's a real easy way to advocate. Thank you so much.
I just want to mention, as I said, we also want to know what steps can I take, and as Don referenced, you can write a postcard to your state representatives. And we, in fact, do have postcards on have some verbiage that you can write to your state representative, thanking them first for passing the swatting legislation and asking them to consider passing a hate crimes legislation in the next legislative session. Let's see what else I just. Also at another table, you can sign for the Request to Speak system, which is a way for Arizona citizens to give their input on pending legislation at the state capitol. I have a form in the back where you can sign up to enroll and receive updates about legislation in the next session from Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. Thirdly, if you're not registered to vote or need to update your voter registration because you moved, Barry Stagel from Stand Indivisible is here. She'll be at a table and she can help you register or update your information. And if you know a teen who will be 18 by November 5th, they are eligible to vote, and we can tell you how they can register as well. And if you're interested in signing the Arizona Abortion Access Petition, whose deadline is approximately 6 weeks away, she also has that petition. Okay, so let's get to questions. But thank you again for joining us. But I know that some of you are waiting to have your questions answered. For Officer McDermott, when you investigate a hate crime, are there different procedures and protocols versus a non-hate crime?
I mean, but there are ways.
Yeah. Whichever you prefer.
So there isn't necessarily different investigative procedures, but I use what's best practices from the DOJ and FBI because I helped write them. And and I wrote all the hate crimes operations orders for the city of Phoenix, so I know what those are too. But so we use the best practices by contacting every victim that calls in because there's always more to the story. I work closely with the other investigative details, so they send me stuff that they see bias nexes in there, and they can send it over to me, or they'll write that there was something there. I call them, at work, we call them misdemeanor homicides, because most hate crimes are misdemeanors, which is like harassment, threats, and the biggest one which the officers miss is disorderly conduct, which is language to provoke, and that is hate speech, it could be. So we have to protect our First Amendment rights, but hate speech directly towards someone, with like somebody was talking about the quarter and whatnot, that could be like, that's language to provoke, which is illegal. So that's a misdemeanor in Phoenix, and we call it, like in my work, I call it misdemeanor homicide, so I work it from every angle. So in other investigative details, they wouldn't do a search warrant on harassment, but I do. So if I need to do a search warrant on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever, then I do it and I get the evidence further that way. So that's pretty much the main difference. I'll go a lot further than if we just have harassment that doesn't have a bias nexus, then there's less that's done with it. But if there's anything that is inflammatory for the protected classes, then I will find ways to do more. It doesn't necessarily mean we get more all the time, but a lot of times we do. So just to real quick to say, like, we do have the sentence enhancement in Arizona for felonies, and I've never seen it used. So how do we hold judges accountable to use it? So that's just my 2 cents, and then hopefully we can have a standalone hate crimes law. And especially we need it for misdemeanors because over 90% of hate crimes are misdemeanors. So if we just have something for felonies, it's not going to be enough depending on how they write it. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a lawmaker, I just follow it, but we need something to really applicable to misdemeanors because that's most of it.
Thank you.
Is that good? I know that was a lot, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the next question is for our students. Who, or are there any non-Jewish partners that you've found on campus? And please comment on mental health resources that are available on campus, and are they effective, and are they readily accessed? Thank you.
Awesome. So I mentioned how there's been a distance between my non-Jewish friends since October 7th. Thankfully, I've been close with a lot of those people. Do I think they're a resource? Probably not, including the members of my fraternity. still something that I have to walk on eggshells around. One resource that I was lucky enough to somehow get a connection through a connection, but now I've been connected with a member of the cabinet for the president of the university, and he reaches out to me very often asking about a student perspective, updating me on how they handle stuff, for example, as the encampments, and they've been doing a really good job. He joked with me, he's like, they're asking to get arrested, we're happy to provide that. But I guess one story that happened with that is they tried to put me in touch with a news source so that, at least in Tucson, the news has been very biased and hasn't reached out to Jewish students. So they tried to put me in touch with this writer for the Daily Star in Tucson, and we were ignored. So that is a little upsetting that they're only taking perspectives from one side. Yeah, I think that's at least the resources I see. Oh, and mental health. Yeah. At least with that aspect, for me, that's the Jewish community. Through prayer, Shabbat dinner, it's been really good. I do have a friend that I don't want to fully speak on her behalf, but she told me she went to the CAPS mental health center, and again, she felt like they just kind of shoot her away. They're like, oh, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Like, tried to play it as if like this is a normal mental health issue that anyone's facing when she has friends and family in Israel who are in pain right now.
So I actually have a story similar. When, like, I would say like 2 months after October 7th, we were trying to like work our way up the chain of command at ASU, and we met with one of the assistant deans who works like with student counseling. And we were telling her everything that's been happening, what can we do, and she said, oh, I was blissfully ignorant that this was happening. And I was like, it has been over a month, and your Jewish students on campus are struggling. And you are here as the spokesperson for all the counselors and all the mental health resources, and you're telling me you're ignorant of what's happening.
Wow.
No, I was very upset. We worked our way all the way up to the vice presidents, who are very annoyed with all of us. But they have to listen to us because we have got them wrapped around our fingers now. But I think it's important, even if they don't want to be your friends, you kind of have to force them to be your friends. You gotta use the state representatives that help you, and they are the people who take over funding of the university, so they kind of have to listen to them. Also, you gotta play your networking in that respect. But Dylan was very right in saying that the best and most effective mental health resources on campus for Jewish students are other Jewish students and Jewish staff and Chabad and Hillels and all the Jewish communities.
Thank you. Good, Taylor, you're back, because I have a question for you. And for Ed.
I'm ready.
Okay, so this question is, how supportive has CORA, C-O-R-A, been? I'm not familiar with that organization, so you'll educate us. And who with CORA was most helpful or supportive? How do we counter JVP, which I believe is Justice
Voices for Palestine.
Jewish Voice for Palestine, sorry. And do you feel that protests will decline with schools on break over the summer? And what, if you have an idea of what the percentage of outside influences? I'm trying to reconcile that.
CORA is the Council of Religious Advisors at Arizona State, and we are lucky to sit on the council and have a representative from Hillel. Chabad also sits on the Council of Religious Advisors, and it's made up of all faith groups. So we meet monthly and discuss. Sometimes it's just learning together, relationship building, and it's been interesting to see people ask questions and really, before making a statement, wanting to find out what we're doing. I will say from the staff side, it's very staff-driven. We haven't seen so much the student side. Students come together around CORA. That's something we're interested in. Well, how do we start building programming so that students of all faiths can come together for a Shabbat or a meal or hummus or et cetera, et cetera. That has not been the timing for it, but we continue to be in partnership with CORA. And every campus is different, right? There's 4 campuses. campus has its own Cora. Downtown, we see a lot more activity than Tempe, for instance, so that's interesting. Jewish Voice for Peace.
Yeah.
What was
The question,
the question?
let's see, how do we counter JVP? And I'll throw in BDS and any of the other alphabet soup of anti-Semitic organizations. If you have a great answer.
I think we need to do some like defining of all these of the ABCs because they are so different, right? So BDS coming from a movement that has been produced by Students for Justice in Palestine, and that has a long-standing history of where it comes from in the Middle East. Jewish Voice for Peace being developed, I believe, in San Francisco area from mostly Jewish individuals, right? So I think that it's all individualized based on the student group. ASU does not have a JVP group. I know that makes it more complicated because that means that the student experience is so vast. Most, if you have heard of JVP, most students do not believe that there's a place for a Jewish state, whereas Hillel has said that that's a part of our mission. We're an open tent, right? We want any student to be invited into our doors or our parking lot. Well, how would we partner with JVP? That would be a very long, hard conversation. And there's several students who are trying to identify for themselves what Israel means to them right now, and we hope Hillel is a place for that. And so can't speak on behalf of JVP, but I can speak on behalf of Hillel when students have questions about, climate right now and their relationship with Israel. Did you have one more?
I think it was about the percentage of outside influencers on campus protests. How many people do you think are actually students who participate in the protests or outside agitators? Does anybody have any idea? Really?
I have to check the stat. We need a source. There were 300 and 400 encampment or protesters from the encampment. We don't know. I don't know those stats. It's something we have to look into ASU PD and find out. We really focus on our students, and so primarily we're really, really concerned about where our students are. And now that the students are not on campus, you need to be a student org to be present on campus, and so that changes the dynamics if a group comes on to campus right now because our students aren't in session. So we're taking a lot of time over summer to assess what students need, to listen, to hear. Some of them right now just want a break, but come July, we're going to start asking a lot of questions about what we think they're going to need. Where is the state of the war? I think that's going to also impact how we're going to respond and what students need. So day to day.
Temperature outside is going to affect whether there's protests. I think we're going to have a quiet summer, and God willing, we'll have progress towards the return of the hostages and peace, and next semester will be easier. If not, we'll be there for the students. We all have to be.
This question, I think, is for Zach. How can we hold administration accountable to follow up on direct hate speech, i.e. language to provoke? I receive reports of fights after hate speech, and it's rarely addressed.
So it's a really good question, and I know that in my presentation I talked a little bit about the chain of command. So again, knowing your student rights and responsibilities handbook, knowing what it says about hate speech, also knowing, and I can't speak for every district, I can say that in my district, we have a policy that any student can be suspended off campus for up to 10 days for any individual infraction. So it's just knowing some of those buzzword things. Your administration cannot tell you legally what a consequence is for a student, that's not yours, they can't legally do that. But if you do feel like something that you have expressed concerns of or is not addressed the right way, follow that chain of command. So think, who did you report it to? Did you report it to the school behavior specialist? Okay, so your next person to talk to is the assistant principal. They didn't handle it, so my next person to talk to is the principal. And just following that chain of command up to the district office if you have to. And making sure, and that's how you hold them accountable. Not saying everybody needs to rush to the district office and lots of complaints. I'm saying that if you report something to a school official and it's not addressed in the way that you think that it should be, that's why the chain of command exists.
And after you've gone up the ladder and and you've gone to the principal, and you've gone to the district office, and you've gone to the superintendent, that's when you contact a school board member.
100%, all of that.
Go to a school board meeting and speak when
That's true, going to a school board meeting and speaking publicly.
Yes, please.
That's a good way.
Appropriate and professional,
Yes,
but please.
yes. Okay, I have two more questions, I think. I have girls who are 7 and 9 years old. They may not be aware of anti-Semitism or know how to behave if they ever experience it. I can talk to them openly, but are there any resources to help me with this conversation? I'm going to turn to Amanda Campbell, who's sitting in the back. I don't want to put you on the spot, but she's the education director for Temple, so you might have, I thought, something to, yeah.
I don't know if
Or do you
ADL,
have-
might have like, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, sorry, Denise Spike,
So,
yes.
and then I can follow up.
Okay.
Like I mentioned before, I am a pre-K teacher here for religious school. I also recently started teaching the twos classroom, also at the ECC. I work for a nonprofit where I work with elementary school kids, and I have a lot of experience with kids. I love them. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. If a student hasn't directly said anything about anti-Semitism, they may not know that word anti-Semitism, but Jewish children know what's going on, whether we want to admit it or not. We can't shelter them from that, unfortunately. I mean, I had a pre-K student, he's 5, come up to me after October 7th and tell me he was scared to be here because he was afraid that terrorists were going to come get him. 5 years old. When we were learning about Israel, I had 2-year-old kids telling me that they are scared for Israel and that there's bad guys that live in Israel. And, you know, it's sad, but it's a reality, and it's a reality that we have to face. And I think it's our responsibility to, like I said earlier, educate ourselves so we can educate our kids, and we can't hide them from it, but we can provide them with the strength and the bravery and the resilience, and most importantly, the Jewish pride to be able to handle these situations. And unfortunately, these kids are going to experience this for as long as this war goes on, even unfortunately after that. But we can't hide it from them, and we have to be honest. And I'm sure Amanda has individual resources. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are some resources where you can get the specific wording. You don't necessarily have to go into the gory details, but explain to them, you know, there are people that don't like Jewish people, but we have to be kind, and we have to be loving, and we have to be representative of our values and teach them to be proud.
And then one more, actually 2 questions, sorry. Have any of the 3 of you or your Jewish friends been personally targeted by harassment or been prevented from going to class or participating in any learning activities?
So my sister, a lot of my friends have been personally harassed and stuff, but there's one story that like really bothers me because it happened to my sister. We went to this retreat over the summer, and we got like t-shirts. They were like the I Love New York t-shirts, but it said I love being Jewish. And she was wearing it to class one day. It was like a few weeks after October 7th, and 4 guys came up to her, said nothing about Israel on there, and they started screaming at her in Arabic, screaming Free Palestine, following her to class until she was able to like kind of get away from them. We had an incident where there was a protest on campus, and Chabad was tabling kind of off to the side. We table there every single week, and they decided to have their protest right in front of the table. And so there were some Jewish students who were kind of like holding Israeli flags right by the protest. And 2 girls got like pushed over by members of this pro-terrorist protest. And then my sister and my friend had like this symbol like drawn at them. And then obviously at the undergraduate student government meeting, we had rocks thrown out the window, but even before that, the signs they were holding, there was one that had like a swastika crossed out, and then the Jewish star crossed out, and I was like, well, that's not a good sign. And so, I mean, it happens all the time with people. Like, I have friends who now are wearing kippahs on campus just because they want to show their pride. I'll walk with them to campus, and people will be screaming at them, and they're just like, yeah, this happens every day. And I was like, oh, wow, like, it is happening. Like, it's not just on the news at Columbia and Harvard. It is happening on every single college campus.
Jewish students who are speaking at a meeting against BDS. That's what BDS. And protesters threw rocks at the window of the room that we were in, and the police took everyone out of the room except the Jewish students. They locked us in and had security at every door. And then they took us in a secret behind the building corridor, down a secret staircase, and had to walk us with armed police officers and security guards all the way off campus. And we were being hidden and like shielded, and it's just crazy. And I have been babysitting Jewish children that are wearing yarmulkes and tzitzis, and people have looked at them and told them, "Why are you wearing that? Like, you don't wear that here. You don't belong here. Why are you like?" Things that you shouldn't say to a person. We've had we put up hostage posters on a building and on the Chabad house on campus, and people came onto private property and ripped the posters down, X'd out the faces. We're seeing that all over the place. Walking to class, I see posters of like destroy Israel, globalize Intifada, and all this stuff. I had people in my social work classes talking about advocating for Hamas and for terrorist organizations, and it's terrible. It's horrible.
Yeah, I'm sorry you guys have to deal with that. That's horrible. I think my campus is definitely not that bad, but walking around with a kippah, I get an occasional comment, like someone will say, "Death to Israel, free Gaza," and I think that wearing a kippah is about the same statement as saying I love being Jewish, so I don't really know. But I actually do think that there is something to say about Jewish pride. You both spoke about that, and I think that's an anti-Semite's worst fear, is Jewish pride. If I get more comments from people who are happy to see me wearing a kippah than people who are upset about that. I do have other scenarios that have happened, like the posters, and we had a fraternity that was vandalized. It's the Jewish fraternity, the API on our campus. For the most part, it's been pretty positive for Jewish students, but in one night I did have a fit of like anger, and I typed out like a timeline of everything that I've witnessed in my personal life and things that have happened on my campus since October 7th. It's about 9 pages with all the images, and I'm happy to share that with Sandy if she wants to share that with anyone here. It's not really that grammarly correct. I wrote it in a night of a little rage, and it's some personal thoughts, but I'm happy to